Hi everyone, I'm Carolyn from Agape Gardens, and I want to talk to you today about container gardening. There are a lot of reasons to use containers, but first we need to talk about what plants need. First, plants need light. So you want to make sure whenever you plant something, whether it's in a container or in the ground, that it has plenty of light. It also needs good nutrition, so you want to make sure you use quality potting soil combined with compost or other items, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And you want to make sure that it has plenty of water. Containers tend to dry out a little bit more quickly, and you want to make sure that they don't dry out too much, or you are going to lose your plants, or they aren't going to do as well. The benefits of container gardening. First, you're going to be able to plant more because you'll have more space. They're also mobile, so if you need to move, if you are in an apartment or in a living situation where you're not going to be there permanently, plant in a container, you can take that plant with you, so you aren't sacrificing your hard work. Another benefit to container gardening sometimes is having your plants more accessible. It's one of the reasons people like to build raised garden beds. It's because it's easier on your body to access the plants if they're raised off of the ground, and sometimes containers can provide that as well. Let's get into some of the ways that you can use containers to grow things. First, starting seedlings. You can use these cups that you can buy at any big box store, Walmart or Target, and you can start your seedlings in there. Just make sure you put holes in the bottom so that the water drains adequately. That's the first step of container gardening, getting your plants started. But once you do, you can use any variety of items. One of the most common is flower pots, but those tend to be expensive unless you find them at a good price. If you do, you should always pick those up. Other things that you can use to grow in are things like Rubbermaid containers. As long as you drill holes so that there's drainage in the bottom, you can grow a lot in this, and it's less expensive than a flower pot. Another option would be something like a window box. We only have these window boxes because they were on clearance for $5 at a store that was just getting rid of them at the end of the season last year. So we're able to get these at a really good price. And what they provide is kind of not necessarily as deep of a growing space, but if you wanted to grow herbs or you wanted to grow lettuce and things like that, this is a perfect kind of container. It's large enough that it can sustain some things, but it's not too large that you can't carry it around. Another way that we've used containers is to use these 55-gallon drums that we were able to find on Craigslist for free. We cut them in half, drilled some holes in the bottom, and planted mint in them. Mint is a great container plant because it's so invasive. If you plant it in your yard, you will never get rid of it. We use as many options as we can find to plant in, including the 55-gallon drum, this metal wash bin we found in the alley by the dumpster, as well as this red pot, which are really valuable because they are so large and they retain moisture so well. So let's talk about what is good to use to grow in. There are any number of items. We were fortunate enough to get some of these really huge pots out of the garbage at a local business. You also may have heard of what are called grow bags. They're essentially, you can get them in a number of sizes. I think this is the 1 gallon size. And these are essentially like a felt bag. There are a different variety of materials that they're made from, but these particular ones feel kind of like felt bags. And the thing that's advantageous about them is they do something called air pruning. When the roots each reach the edge of the bag, it kind of prunes that off, and it sends signals back to the plant to produce more, to grow more. And so your plants can grow quite large in the grow bags. The one disadvantage that I have found is that they dry out very quickly, especially the black grow bags. So I would just be cautious of that when you're thinking about planting in them. They also make grow bags that are specifically for potatoes. I tried to grow potatoes in them last year. If you want to look back at some of those garden tours, I'll link them. My potatoes didn't do well, but it was my first time growing potatoes. But the idea is that you have this flap that you can open and harvest the potatoes in the bottom if you wanted to eat them sooner. So you can use any container that will hold soil, that will drain, to grow plants. And like I said before, it saves you space. You can grow a greater variety of things. There are some drawbacks to growing in containers. Not everything is going to thrive in a container, but if you want to grow it, try it. If that's your only option, try it in a container and you might justify the odds. Another challenge is maintaining moisture. It is difficult to maintain moisture, especially when you plant in something that is black in color. It attracts heat, and it can require you to be more attentive in watering those things. Also, I want to mention now about the soil. You want to make sure that your soil is not compacted. If you just put compost in one of these containers and then plant in it, it will get very compacted and make it difficult for the roots to get through. So you want to make sure that you are using either potting soil or you're using a mixture of compost, something that's nutrient dense that the plant can feed off of. And then you want to add something that's going to help it to retain moisture, like peat moss or coconut coir, to help it maintain that moisture. And then you want to add something that's kind of going to loosen that soil so that it has aeration and it's easy for the roots to get through. And you can add what's called perlite. Perlite is this small white stuff. So perlite is actually made from volcanic glass. It's not styrofoam. You don't ever want to put styrofoam in with your plants. Also, you can use something called vermiculite, which looks very similar. They're both very light in weight, but vermiculite is actually a mineral. I think it comes from a stone. So I just want to say that growing in containers can be rewarding and productive. I want to encourage you to take this opportunity to try and grow something in a container. I do want to give you another tip to trellis anything that might get unruly. For example, I'm going to take one of these huge pots and plant this goji berry, which you can see is a little unwieldy. And so if you use a trellis, you could basically use anything that stands straight up to kind of attach your plant to. If you grew like a cucumber or you grew peas, if you put something in there for that to climb on, it's going to be a lot more manageable. Other plants that do well in containers are things like peppers, potatoes, radishes, strawberries, beans. Beans grow really well in containers, as do any kind of greens, spinach, kale, lettuce, all of those things. And so you might see some folks that do not encourage you to grow tomatoes in containers, but I have what's probably a 15 or 20 gallon pot that, again, I rescued from the trash, that I grew the most epic Dr. Weich's yellow tomato in last year. It was my star tomato plant. Again, I'll link to one of those garden tours for you to check it out. And it did amazingly well. So I just want you to remember that just because someone else hasn't had success doesn't mean that you can't have success. I do also want to mention I'm going to link some videos in the description box for anyone that would like some additional resources on container gardening. Please go check them out. If you enjoyed this video or are considering container gardening, give it a like. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, and I thank you for being with us. See you on the next one.